I'm really excited to introduce Jeff Parker. Jeff submitted a really interesting talk about phishing. As you've just seen, there's a lot of discussions about phishing. And one of the things people have been talking about is how do we pump up the volume? Just as Masha mentioned a little while ago, how do we make this more realistic and still have valid metrics and training value? How can we compare apples to oranges as we become more targeted? So that's why we are really, really excited about Jeff. Now, Jeff, I know we're starting 1 or 2 minutes late, but don't speed up. We'll just take those 1 or 2 minutes out of break, which is coming next. So you've got your full 30 minutes. Otherwise, Jeff, you're on.
Thanks so much, Lance. Great to see you, and it's really good to be here. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Jeff Parker. I'm the Security Awareness and Education Principal for BlueCross, BlueShield of Tennessee. Today, we're going to talk about a really interesting topic, which is building an automated tiered phishing system. And we'll tell you all about what that is. And more importantly, we're going to tell you in detail how to build your own. We want you to walk away from this summit and go back to your office and have all the tools you need to be able to create your own tiered phishing system. And we'll talk about that in detail. Now, I want you not to be too concerned about missing something because we got a lot to cover in the next half hour. And remember that the presentation will be available in the archives. And woohoo, I've also got something for you. It's a worksheet. And you'll be able to use those worksheets to actually design your own tiered phishing system. So that's coming as well. Now on the screen here, you see my buddies, the prairie dog. We're starting there because in many cases, we get something called the bird dog effect, in which you launch your campaign. Maybe you launch it to everybody and you send out all the emails at the same time. Maybe you're sending the same email, maybe you're sending random ones. But when you launch them to everybody at the same time, inevitably, someone's going to jump up and go, hey, did you get that message? Nowadays, we're all working remote. So they're probably going to IM or Teams you or ping or email you. And sometimes they'll just forward it and say, is this legit? Which is not a good idea, but it does happen. So that's kind of where we're starting from. It's what I think of as throwing spaghetti against the wall, because we're going to see what sticks in terms of what we do with our phishing program. We asked ourselves a different question. We said, what if we could match the phish test to the user? If we could do that, then the skill level of the user would increase. And as it increased, the message difficulty level increases. In our last panel, we heard a little bit about what's the reality of a real attack and the response to that versus our simulated phishing attacks, our campaigns. And this kind of speaks to that. Certainly, we get a lot more accurate metrics, we think, out of it. It's a lot more granular risk reporting, and we believe that we can reduce risk by better training our users. Why? Because training the users to recognize phishes at their level gives them an opportunity to be successful. We're not hitting beginners with really hard ones, and we're not throwing softball at people that have never been caught before. So that's what the program is all about. We define the tiered phishing system as matching the user's skill to the difficulty of the phishing message they receive. It's automated because we use dynamic or smart groups, as some companies call them, and rules to automate the user placement. So as the user's phish-prone percentage changes, goes up or down, they will automatically, based on rules and smart groups, move between different groups. And we're phishing those different groups or tiers at different levels. Now, if you're not familiar with phish-prone percentage, our organization uses KnowBe4 as a platform, and that's what they basically call click rate. Click rate could be different for everybody. It could be somebody clicking a link, opening an attachment, enabling a macro, it could be replying, putting in data, whatever your failure measurement is, that's how you would use that for that phish-prone percentage. So what does this look like in practice? The maze at the heart of the castle is really dynamic groups and rules. And when you put them together, they're going to be what triggers the user to move between groups. Now, when we first started talking about this, I was very intimidated. I'm like, I've got all my static groups set up, everything's working fine. I'm not sure we want to do this, but my boss was really interested in seeing, could we actually match the level of difficulty of the phishing campaigns we were sending to the users and see if we could then measure that, and if we could get them to advance and go back to maybe a lower level if their skill level went up or down. So that's what we put together. Now here on the screen, notice that we have a group name, which we show as a tier on the left, and we've got 4 of them. In our top level, it's the advanced folks, and they're 0% phish prone because in the history of our phishing platform, they've never been caught. They have an actual perfect score. Notice on the right, there's a whole lot of those. Then we have our very good group, where they're between 1 and 10% phish prone. So for a click rate like that, they're really good. They don't get caught very often, but they're not perfect. And again, we've got a lot bigger number over there than, for example, an intermediate or beginner. If you have an organization that has a really low click rate, you will find an experience like this, where 1 or 2 different groups of people, based on these metrics, these percent of click rates, are going to be really big, and then the others are going to be a lot smaller. And we'll talk about how you could manage that using your tiers. So the secret sauce, not to jump on the scavenger hunt, but in this case, what makes this system work is groups and rules. And that's what equals the dynamic groups and the tiering system we developed and gives you your automation. Let's take a look at groups first, because this is a new concept to people that are used to working with static groups. Static groups don't change. It's where you've got a division or a business line or accounting or HR or your New York office, a geographic location. The users in those groups don't change unless new people come in and people leave the company or they change jobs. But here we're looking at tiers, and tiers is a different idea, because once again, notice that we see in tier 1, we've got never failed people. We've got a 0% click rate or phish prone percentage. In tier 2, again, we've got those people who are really good, but not quite perfect. Then in tier 3, it's going down a little bit. That's 11 to 50. Those are our intermediate people. And in tier 4, we've got the beginners who pretty much will click on anything. And we've all got the people that cannot stop clicking at our companies. So they do exist. If a lot of your users are either really good or perfect, you might need to divide these percentages up. Later, I'll tell you about dividing them up in a little bit more detail, and we'll talk about how to actually create phishing campaigns that will phish these groups instead of what we used to. But here you can see I make a suggestion. Instead of going 1 to 10% range, we're talking about maybe try 1 to 4 or 5, and maybe go 6 to 10. So you break up one of those tiers into 2 parts. One of the things this will help with a lot is if, like us, you have a lot of users in one area, it's going to smooth out the reporting bell curve and make it a lot more symmetrical. So we think that's important, and that's something we have to do. It also gives you more granular metrics, and we wouldn't be complete unless we talk about metrics, which we'll do in a little while. So that's creating the groups. Now we have to talk about the rules that make the users move, that trigger the moves and that have the users included in groups. When I first started thinking about rules, I was really intimidated by this. I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure I could figure out how to create these rules and make it all work and everything. But as it turns out, it's actually very straightforward. And what you're looking at here on this slide is actually something from our console. It's an actual rule we use. We changed the numbers and things because we wanted to do that just, of course, for the keep the company happy and protect the information. But in this case, let's take a look at the rules and take them apart because they're so straightforward. it's a great thing to look at, because then you guys can say, hey, I could do this. I can actually figure this out. The top user field in purple, a little bit of purple over on the left, is the phish prone percentage has got to be greater than 0. So what do we know? We know these are not our perfect people, because then it would be equal to 0. And actually, the way you drive these rules is that little top drop down where you see the down arrow that says smart group criteria. You simply pick these criteria and then set the value. Then in user field 2, in the middle, you see a phish prone percentage that's got to be less than 6. So what do we know? We know the range for this group is 1 to 5%. Over on the right, you can see the system's gone out and says, hey, I have this many users that match those criteria. And then on the bottom, we say for user date, the user must not have been created in the last 30 days. So they've got to have been at the company for at least a month. Why do we do that? Because we have to do something different for new users. And we took that into account. We've got to baseline our new users, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. Now, a couple of things to cover here. First of all, when you create these rules and you save this dynamic group, the groups will populate when the rules are met. So the platform will automatically go out and put the users in the group. For those of you out there who are going, but what about my existing groups? Well, the answer is don't panic. And the reason for that is nothing's going to happen to them. No changes will take place. The system will add these groups. It will not in any way modify what you already have. It won't take them away. It won't change them. All it's going to do is add the users to this group in addition to what you already have. So that's important to keep track of. Now, another thing to be aware of is that even though we use a specific commercial platform, 99% of the platforms out there have this capability. Almost all the commercial systems have got it. They have rules you can create. They have some form of dynamic or smart groups you can use. So you can actually create this. If you're using a freeware system like GoFish, for example, that doesn't have dynamic groups, but all of the commercial ones, as far as I know, do. Now, I told you we were going to baseline our new users, and here's how we go about and do it. When people come into the company or come back to the company, they may not have a phish prone percentage. Why? They have no history on the platform. You've never run a campaign against them. So what we do is set up a campaign that runs automatically for 4 weeks. And in those 4 weeks, we are going to phish our new users once a week. And we're going to use either level 1 or level 2 templates. Now, most systems will have a level of difficulty scale of 1 to 5. So that's what they've got for range. And even though you may have new experienced users, what we want to do is give them a break. They're new to the company. They may click on anything. They don't know what's internal, what's external, what's real, what's not there. So what we'll do is phish them at a really easy level. You can decide otherwise, but that's what we do. And whether they get a perfect score or not, they will have a phish prone percentage at the end of 30 days because they're going to go through 4 campaigns. And at that point, the rules we created already in the other groups are going to take over because now they're past 30 days and they're going to put them in the right group. So it automatically moves the people. It is literally set it and forget it. Once I created these things and started them running, all I do is look at the results when the campaigns conclude and see where the people are. I also check to make sure they go to a group and that sort of thing. But well, once it's working, it's working. Okay, so what do we do with campaigns? Remember, what we've been doing is phishing different groups or different users based on a static group concept. So we might do a campaign against HR, or we might do a campaign against finance. We might do a campaign against IT or security, or whoever it is. What we're going to do in this case is create campaigns that target these tiers or dynamic groups. And we're going to do that by their phish prone percentage. The reason why we do that is that then we can match the level of message difficulty to the user group. So again, in this example, you can see in our advanced group at 0%, we're going to give them the very, very hard ones. We're going to give them 5-star or above. Now, our platform only goes up to 5-star, but like you guys, we sometimes create our own bespoke or unique templates, or we'll use actual phishing attacks that come into the company, make them benign, and send them back out to find out what's going to happen, what are our users going to do if they get this type of phishing attack or this actual phishing attack. So that's something we do. But the system is designed for 5 levels, and that's usually what we fish at. As you can see, as we go down, the next group is very good, but they're not that advanced. That means they're 1 to 10, and they're going to get a little bit easier ones at 4-star. Intermediate, well, that's a pretty big range from 11 to 50. So we actually break that up into groups of 10% each, and then we fish them all together as intermediate. There's another reason for that. Again, if you look at your user count over on the right, that second to right column, you'll notice that most of the users are in those 2 top groups. I've only got 500 people out of our 7,500 that are sitting in intermediate, which means there's no problem with phishing 4 or 5 tiers in one campaign, simply because I don't have that many users. And it's very, very convenient to do, both for numbers and reporting and logistics of the campaigns themselves. All right. I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I want to introduce you to Bob. This is Bob. Bob is one of your users who regrettably clicks on just about everything. He's the guy that will walk out of a training session going, don't click, and then he clicks anyways. We're not going to be able to send him a super, super hard one because we know he's going to fail. So we're going to send him something at level 1 or 2. What kind of message is he going to get? Well, he's going to get the Nigerian banking message. Ooh. Bob, send me your contact information and you can get half of $20 million in $100 bills. Woo! How exciting. Hopefully he won't click on that. We'll recognize it and we'll report it. But notice, because he's a beginner, we can match an easy message to him as compared to sending them out at random against 5 different levels of difficulty, or sending him something he can't handle. Now, the next person I want you to meet is Sue. Sue's a very different kind of person than Bob. Sue works in accounts payable, and she is a very, very advanced user. She has never been caught by anything we've thrown at her or any real attack coming into the company. So what are we going to give her? We're going to give her a super hard message. I think business email compromise, BEC, would be appropriate. So she's going to get a message saying, hey, Sue, are you in the office? Thanks, James. And hopefully Sue will not look at this and go, oh, it's James. This could be really good for my career. Yeah, James, I'm in the office. Hopefully she's going to spot that Gmail address, see the typos, realize it's not from James, and she'll report it. I doubt she'll get fooled by this because she hasn't been fooled by anything. But this is a practical example, just like Bob, of how we can now match the level of difficulty of our messages to the place where the user's at in terms of their skill level. And it does give them a chance both to be successful, but really to keep developing those skills almost like an athlete would. And we think that's a very good way to actually get more realistic when we try to figure out what's our real risk if we have a real attack. Okay, so how do you fish your tiers? I wanted to include something about that because we're not used to using a system like this. So to fish the tiers, you're going to build your campaigns to include the groups you're going to fish and label it by tier. So instead of saying August 2021 accounting, you're going to say August 2021 advanced 0%. you are going to use the templates from your hardest level, your level 5, and then you're going to build the other ones accordingly. Then you'll build a not quite as advanced, your intermediate, and your beginner ones. At the end of this month, once you've sent those, and it's time to send another one in September, you press the clone button, clone the campaign you already sent, and rename it. Now you just call it September, 0%. You don't have to change the group that it's going to, because it's going to be the same 0%ers. What will have changed is who's in the group. And that's where we get to the rinse and repeat part. Now, and we've been running this system now for a year and a quarter live. And now all I do is go in and I just go clone, 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 and I rename them to the current month and just send them out. Now, before I send them, there's a top tip here I want you to pay careful attention to, because while the people have not changed, may have changed in the groups haven't changed, but the messages may have changed. Our system adds new templates constantly, and we use about 2,200 templates a month in ours. So a good idea is to go through your new templates up to the last date you sent that last campaign and make sure there's nothing new that's going to get you in trouble. We have no problem spoofing HR, IT, your manager. We do that, but we don't touch things like you're going to lose your job, you are in trouble with HR, things like that that could be considered really, really painful for our users to have to deal with. So no job, no livelihood, that sort of thing. We stay away from those topics. On the right, there you can see a message to Sue Storm. It looks like her Outlook 365 or Office 365 account got requested to be terminated. And here she's got to verify that she doesn't know anything about that. This is probably a level 4. We've used one like that effectively before. You guys just are seeing a model that there are different levels to the messages. So different people will respond different ways, as we know. There are a few things we learned, a la that won't hurt, did it, as we were building this thing. And I wanted to share all that with you. Now here we're taking the top 3 just because of time and circumstance, that sort of thing. But I wanted to make sure you're aware that in the worksheets I've provided for you, I'm giving you more of the things that the sort of pain points we realized we had as we were developing the system. So hopefully you can learn from our mistakes and you won't make the same ones. One of them is if you create a lot of tiers, you could be doing a lot of campaigns, or you may get lopsided metrics unless you group tiers into campaigns. So like I said, if you've got 4 groups that you would consider intermediate, it's fine to do them all as one campaign as an intermediate grouping. It's also perfectly okay to move tiers or groups between different campaigns. Remember to balance the levels of difficulty for your phishing templates against how many you have in your platform. If you've got 5, you're going to be hard pressed to do more than 5 different levels of phishing, simply because you're going to be sending easier or harder messages to people that maybe that's not the right level for them. And of course, as I mentioned, you can still create your own. This doesn't affect anything you've been able to do. We do create our own. We do a lot of ad hoc phishing campaigns too, especially for smaller groups within the company. Now, the last thing to be really careful about is incrementing the phish-prone percentage when you make rules. I messed this up, and I started getting reports that I had a user getting phished 2 or 3 times when I was sending out the campaigns. I'm going, what's wrong? What's wrong? There's something wrong with the system. And I thought it was on the back end. And then I dumped the CSVs, the data for which users were in the groups. And then I saw the same user in 2 groups. And I was like, shoot, that's not the actual word I said. We had a problem in that I said 1 to 5% for one group and 5 to 10% for the next group. And guess what? The 5%ers were in 2 groups and they were getting more than one phishing message. Fortunately, nothing bad happened before I caught it, but you want to be very careful to increment your numbers to make sure you're not duplicating that, in this case, 5%. So if it's 1 to 5, your next number is going to start at above 5. It's going to be 6 to 10. Okay, That's really important. The other thing to be aware of is don't use decimals. I tried decimals just to see if I could get it really, really finely detailed, and I still ended up with users in multiple groups because just for one campaign, we'd have multiple users with the same percentage with that decimal in it. So I said, okay, don't use decimals. That doesn't work either. And again, there's more in the worksheets that I put together. Now, metrics is always important. Here, you can see there's a bunch of different types of metrics that we've got. And the reason for that is there's more we can do when we're using tiers. For example, now you can report on what tier the user is in, or what's the history of the group or the history of the user. How long has he been in certain tiers or groups? What is their trajectory? Did they go up? Did they go down? Did they go up and down? It's like you can actually track the trajectory of the users, and sometimes that's useful. Now, one of the things that's really cool is that as the program matures, as you get data, last month in July, I went and I launched our campaigns, and as soon as I hit the launch button for our beginner campaign, it came right back with an error. And I was like, I wonder what I did wrong. And the answer was nothing. We had no beginner users. For the first time in 15 months, there weren't any in the beginner groups. And I was like, score! I was so excited. I went to my manager. I said, Brian, first time, no users in our beginner groups. It works, it works. And he was like, score! Yeah, he already knew it worked. He was really happy about this. But I mean, it was really kind of cool to see it in actuality. The other thing that happened that was really kind of interesting to record was when we looked at our 2020 numbers, the month we turned this thing on, whoo, boy, we got a huge peak in click rate because all of a sudden everybody was getting matched, and man, did we get a bump in our numbers. It messed up my average number for the year, but at least it showed us, okay, when we got asked, why is there this huge bump in numbers? Well, that's when we went to tiered phishing. Okay, another thing you can do is number of failures in the last 12 months that a user has. That's really important too. And for us, it doesn't require the tiered system, but it's something important to report on. And for us, it's important because we have company policies that say after a certain number of failures within 12 months, a user is going to training. So different things you can use. And again, you'll see this when you review the deck, hopefully, or in your worksheets. How do we put it all together? To put it all together, we need these 8 building blocks. This is the foundation of tiered automated phishing as we implemented it. You need rules, very simple ones, as you saw. You got to be careful, no rule overlap. Build the groups. You need the granularity, but don't get group happy, meaning don't build too many. Use them suitable for your organization. If you're a big multinational organization, you may have a lot more tiers than someone with one large geographic location and maybe 7,500, 8,000 users. Fewer groups are better managed for sure. It is a very good idea to run in parallel. What does that mean? After you build your groups and after you populate them, keep using the system you've been using and watch the flow of the groups to make sure everything's working. Check the members of the groups to make sure there aren't any duplicates. That'll validate your rules for you. If you need assistance building this, get a dedicated vendor CSR, customer service rep at your company. That's your hosting platform for your phishing if you've got one. The reason for that is you do not want to have to reinvent the wheel every time you put in a ticket or need help with something. We were really lucky. We got a really, really good one that had been with the company a long time. She got the best engineer for dynamic groups involved, and it really, really helped us put it together. And then lastly, in terms of reporting, you're looking for a good, smooth bell curve, one that's very symmetrical, and you can adjust your groups as you need to move users around or move the phishing campaigns around so you get that symmetry. It's a very straightforward system to build and maintain. It only sounds and feels intimidating. Trust me, guys, if I can do this, you can do this. We think that training users to recognize phishes at their level is going to give them a better chance and better opportunity to be successful. We think it'll reduce the risk overall to the company, and hopefully will show that you're doing a more effective job with the phishing campaigns, especially when it comes to modeling what really happens in real attacks on your company. The last thing I want to leave you with this afternoon is Dilbert, who never fails to give us a laugh. He says, why do phishing scams keep working? And there's our advanced guy looking at his screen and asks him to enter the bank account. He says it's a scam. The gal in intermediate, she says, wait for it, it's a scam. And then the guy in the jacket and tie with a high back chair, when he's asked to enter his bank account number, says, okie dokie, there it is. So that is really, in a nutshell, what this system is all about. My contact information is there on the slides. You are welcome to reach out to me. I love to help people and support them wherever I can. And I will be happy to answer questions as we turn this back over to Lance, and then I'll be hanging out in Slack until you guys run out of steam.